Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for that great welcome. I have no doubt that what I say will challenge some of you, but standing here above the Elbe, looking at the glittering water and the glittering buildings, and this glittering and superb building, and seeing the children coming in to the cultural events that are all around us, we must challenge ourselves. Because not only is it the case that millions of people in the world have no access to what we enjoy, but the many people around us in our own country have no access to it and are questioning very deeply the system in which they are living. My job as a journalist is to listen to them, and I can assure you that for many occasions it is an unpleasant task to listen to the anxiety and anger and fear that is rising around us. But I want to try and offer a positive way out. It is just one positive way out. But it's one that I am known for, as it were, putting a very spiky and sharp edge on this proposition, but you will find it among business consultants, among technologists as well. And it's summed up in the word post-capitalism. I've used the word after capitalism here in order not to provoke you too much. One day, in the year 1602, Galileo must have woken up very, very angry with the engineering profession, as I'm sure many of you have also done in your lives. Because Galileo said, I am seeing too many machines made that don't work. And the reason they do not work is that people do not understand physics. There is a widespread belief, said Galileo, that a machine produces more energy than is put into it. And he spent 30 pages of very closely argued mathematics in a book called De Mechanicè, showing that this was rubbish, that a machine does not produce energy, that it transforms energy. His own professors who taught alongside him at Padua University were teaching that a machine defies nature. Galileo said, no, a machine transforms nature, and that is all it does. There is, in other words, no mysterious force operating inside a machine. In 1767, Adam Smith had to make the same argument to economists. Because now we're in the early industrial revolution. This is a new common engine, the engines that were used to power the coal mines and the tin mines of Britain. Early industrial machine. And Smith is surrounded by business people and economists who say, look at the takeoff, look at the power of these things. They must be producing value. And Smith, together with his successor, Ricardo, and together with his successor, Marx, made a very important point. Machines on their own produce no value. Just as much as they do not produce energy, they do not produce economic value. What they do is transform labor and allow labor power to spread its economic value on a vast scale never before seen. So Smith says all the wealth in the world was produced by labor, not by machines. This theory in the 1870s became unfashionable, but it's a useful one because it allows us to disabuse ourselves of what is real and what is illusory. There is nothing physically mysterious about a machine. There is nothing economically mysterious about a machine. There is no ghost, in this sense, in the machine. Now, what about machines like this? The Pentium 4 silicon chip. We are quite mystified by them. We're living through, I would argue, another age of mystification about machines. Now, if you look at this, it is a machine. It has no moving parts, but that's what a silicon chip is. It's a machine without moving parts. This machine had 5 million transistors in it in the mid-1990s when it was the number one thing. Do you remember, those of you, do you remember Windows when you could actually do two things at once? That's what this allowed. 5 million transistors burned onto the machine. Today, each one of you in your pocket has a silicon chip with at least 2 billion switches. Just 20 years later, 2 billion switches. Now, I'm no historian of engineering, and in fact, there is no really good history of the question I'm about to ask. How many switches have ever been produced in the era of electrical engineering in the world forever? I would say more than 2 billion, but probably not more than all the switches we have in our pockets. In other words, we have in this room more electrical power, that is electrical engineering power, in our collective pockets than the whole of humanity ever produced until these things. That's just, no, how does it manifest? It manifests by the far more well-known figure, which you use at dinner parties, which is that since 2003, or rather today, we will produce, everybody on Earth will collectively produce more information than humanity produced until 2003. Every day, we produce the whole history of human information again and again and again. Now, some of it is bad information. Some of it is lies, as we now find out, or fake news. But we have machines, based on much more complex versions of the silicon chip, that can start to differentiate between good information and bad information. And the panel that will come after me will discuss this. So what do machines like this allow? Well, here's just one of many impact graphs that I could show you. The green line shows the collapsing cost of sequencing DNA. And you will see that in the year 2000, it used to cost $100 million to sequence an entire genome of DNA. If you had told your children you will have a great career as a high-value super worker sequencing DNA, you made a mistake, because there are still good jobs to be had in the DNA sequencing world, but the actual cost of sequencing DNA has fallen to $1,000 in 15 years. And the consultancy Deloitte goes further than me. I recognize that the scale is logarithmic. You see, if you can't read the tiny thing, it goes from 100 million to 1,000. The scale is logarithmic, so that green line is an exponential fall. Deloitte say it doesn't stop. Now that's quite an amazing thing, isn't it? Deloitte, one of the biggest technology consultancies in the world, believes that exponential change in technology will never stop, unlike steel, unlike electrical engineering, unlike anything we ever saw before. I'm not certain about that, but I don't need to be certain to try and convince you of what follows from this. That this, as the economist Paul Romer wrote in 1990, just disrupts the price mechanism all across capitalism. And what I have argued is that, in fact, there are 4 key impacts of information technology that we have to take account of in our long-term thinking, whether it is for businesses planning the future, whether it is states, and whether it is people. Here they are. First of all, information technology disrupts the price mechanism. It is a different kind of commodity, says Romer, a completely mainstream economist, a completely different kind of commodity to all other commodities. You can use it without degrading it. You can share it, so I can use the same MP3 file as you are listening to. I'm listening to it at the same time. And the cost of reproducing it falls over time quite dramatically. The cost of producing it, of course, is the innovator's reward. The cost of making a good music recording is a real cost. Reproducing it infinitely brings its price, causes price curves to occur that are similar to this all across capitalism. The second thing it does is to de-link work from wages. So many of you, everybody here, even those of you who are even now looking at your mobile phones, are mixing leisure, work. Leisure and work are no longer they're no longer divided as they were, even in our fathers' generations, by the clock. That you punched your card into the clock as you went into work, you punched it when you came out of work. None of us in this room do that. Work bleeds over into leisure. Leisure, free thinking, freedom, creativity, bleeds over into work. And they generate good things from each other. But as a result, we're no longer working hour by hour to earn wage after wage. Information technology has delinked many of the command mechanisms of business. So it's quite easy to find horizontal businesses. It's quite easy to find, even in the commercial sector, with no altruistic business goal, non-managed, very, very meagerly small management structures, non-managed businesses. Information technology does that. The third effect is the network effect, which I hope everybody understands, because it's more than 100 years old. Theodore Weil, the boss of Bell Telecom, said, the more people there are on a network, the more useful it is to them, and the more profitable it can be to me. That's the network effect. Free utility. In fact, one way of thinking about what does a silicon chip do, what does an information machine do? It is simply, it expands utility, use value, exponentially. The final thing that happens is very important for us who cover and write about economics. It's obvious that the levels of information technology we are operating with have created information asymmetry. There is a huge power imbalance between people's possession of information and their lack of information. Now, it's a no-brainer that should happen in a situation like this, but for economists it's a big challenge because our mainstream theory tells us this shouldn't happen. All previous markets have eroded inequalities of information. So the patent on one drug 60 years ago is worthless 40 years ago. That's natural. That's what capitalism does. It erodes information property and inequality, but now it's not doing so. And in fact, information inequality is one of the biggest drivers of all the discontent I talked about. So those are the four effects, I would argue. What are the effects on? One of the big problems over the last 30 years, until 2008, 2011, when capitalism was very, very successful and it dragged huge numbers of people in the developing world out of poverty, is we stopped asking ourselves, what is capitalism? But the thinkers I have studied and tried to engage with did ask that, and I think a good summary of it, from my point of view, is it has been a complex adaptive system. So it has been complex, that is, it's not a kind of simple thing. It has always adapted. And the adaptations have been huge. They don't just happen gradually. Often, 3 or 4 times in the history of industrial capitalism, the last 200 years, we have seen changes so big that people from the old generation said, you know what, that doesn't look like capitalism anymore to me. My favorite example of this is Rosa Luxemburg, the Marxist Polish-German teacher of the German Social Democratic Party, who wrote a book in 1914 saying capitalism had reached the limits of the market. When she started writing the book, there was one movie theater in Berlin, and when she finished writing the book, there were 163 movie theaters in Berlin, and capitalism had found a new market. It had adapted. She was wrong. What she wasn't wrong about was the importance of the outside world. And this is the last bullet point, where I call it the colonization, used in a non-value judgment sense. The colonization of the non-market by the market has been a very important way of adapting. For example, we will all have drunk today some very nice sparkling mineral water with a brand name on it. 20 years ago, we would have drunk tap water. 20 years ago, women went to the hairdresser to do their hair, but did their nails themselves. Now, many people do not do their nails themselves. This has been commercialized. Many things that we once did as family and friends have been commercialized. Above all, as you now find out, your actual ability to make friends and interact with friends now is somebody else's business model, albeit not a business model that is particularly going very well for the person who made it their business model, which is Mark Zuckerberg. Capitalism has always been able to replace things which could be done cheaply with low-value work by creating new high-value business models. And the example of the movie theater is a great one, because what it replaced was the vaudeville theater, the big theater of the late 19th, early 20th century, whose workforce looked like the crew of a ship. They literally ran up and down ropes. There were so many of them. In a movie theater, you need one projectionist and a boy to help him, and 3 people selling ice cream and 1 person on the door. And that's just progress. My argument is that information technology makes both these adaptation mechanisms hard to do. It makes it harder, for reasons we'll come to colonize new space, and it makes it very difficult to think of what's the replacement for DNA sequencing. What is it? What can we do that makes things more expensive and requires higher value labor? Now, I argue that as a result of these contradictions, a form of capitalism has emerged. Most of you will interact with it, but many of you, I'm guessing here in the Hamburg business community, will be on the edges of it. But a form of information capitalism has emerged that is dysfunctional. And here's why. It reacts to each one of my 4 effects with a reaction that is not benign. To the falling price of everything that touches information technology, what do we have? Monopoly. You know, in the supermarket sector, here as in Britain, there are usually 3 or 4 monopolies. Same in accountancy. Same in the making of turbojet engines. 3 or 4 big companies that interact with each other and share the market in a fairly benign way, albeit sometimes problematically. Not so in technology. In each sector of technology, there can only be one. There can only be one Google, one Facebook, one Amazon, one eBay, one Alibaba, one Tencent. That's the problem. So we now have the single market monopoly. What's it there to do? To make prices that could be low, high. Unfortunately, that's what monopolies do. The second impact is on work. Because you would think amid all the vast expansion of our technical expertise that we could reduce the amount of work that people do. But instead, we create millions of low-value jobs that I would argue many of them don't need to exist. Some of them are very coercive. The terrible example in Britain, where I come from, is that 20 years ago we had 4,000 installed automatic car wash machines, and if somebody washed your car by hand, it would very likely be with a white glove and your car would be a Rolls Royce. Okay? Now we have 1,000 installed car wash machines and 20,000 hand car washes operated by very poor, often migrant workers on ultra minimum wages and often in conditions of semi-slavery. Why are we doing this? Why? What is it? It's not you, it's not my decision. I don't decide to do this. Something is making us do this. The third response is the response we've had to networks. So the Facebook model, the Google model, the Twitter model is to take your networked interaction and to own it somewhere else where you can't see what's going on and to monetize it. So the network effect has been grabbed, as all good monopolists do. You grab territory, and now there's a fight going on about how much of that territory they're allowed to have. And in response to the sudden eruption of huge asymmetries in information access, we now have these huge companies lobbying for that to become institutionalized. So I want to know what Facebook's algorithm is doing to me. But that suggestion, not just to Zuckerberg, but to his lawyers and to the accountants and to the advisors, is as heretical as the one Galileo made when he said, the earth is not the center of the universe. You know, the idea that I should know what forces are operating on me is heretical. So if we think of the economy as a mixture of energy, materials, machines, and work, we can start to ask ourselves, how might these be changed if we took control of this process and used it benignly? And in the last minute and a half, because my clock is ultra accurate, I will explain what I think we can do. The project of post-capitalism is not designed to be frightening. It's not an attempt to sell you communism under a better wrapper. I think it consists of these 4 things. If you think I said there are 4 effects and 4 responses by business and economics, these are 4 things I would like us, states, policymakers, businesses, to think about for the future. The one is to promote the non-market sector, the collaborative, the peer-to-peer, the social lender, the credit union, the platform co-op of cleaners or taxi drivers who are trying to gain work without somebody standing as the middleman creaming off the rent economically from their work. You know, that's what the British state did to the factory system. They said, these factories are going to change the world, but just stop employing children in them, please. It took a little bit of a time, and then the factory owners said, yes, the magic is not the children. The magic is the machine and the investment. It's capitalism. Now, with post-capitalism, the state has to take control as well. We need to promote rapid automation, to reduce the working day, to stop creating jobs that don't need to exist. And so we need to find ways that people can live with non-dependent on wages. And there's a big argument, there's no time to discuss it here, but the idea of the basic income or basic services for all is one that we need to consider. We need to legislate to break up monopolies. That's what Theodore Roosevelt did. Either break them up or take parts of them into the state control. Somehow we need to revitalize the diverse ecosystem of businesses, because the large businesses, I would argue, are making some sectors of our economy sclerotic. And finally, let's just say this. Information property, intellectual property, is a great thing. But when I write a book, I don't want to be earning the money from it in perpetuity. You know, if you do work, as I have done, for a major Hollywood studio, you sign a contract saying that they own your work even once the planet has exploded and the universe is dust. Yeah? Even then, Warner Brothers will own the work that I did for them. I don't want them to do that. I want to be rewarded in my lifetime. I want the copyright and the intellectual property to expire, and I want the information I create eventually, quite soon, to become a public good. That, in the time available, is what I mean by post-capitalism. Thank you. Thank you.